Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to day 297 of Humanity Rising. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been meditating on the reality that has been now confirmed by scientists around the world and carried in Arctic News, a publication of science around what's happening in the Arctic Circle. That we've now reached 2 degrees centigrade of temperature rise above pre-industrial levels and past 400 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. And so humanity is no longer at the precipice. We're falling off the precipice. And we all need to now take this in. The scientists that wrote the article that I'll put in the chat, hoping that everybody can read it, are now saying that within the next 4 to 5 years, we're going to probably experience what they're calling an extinction event. Just imagine a shaking of the world, maybe 10 times or 100 times more severe than what we've just experienced with the pandemic, which was actually, if you think about it, a very gentle reminder from nature that we're not in charge and that we can be brought to a standstill and forced into isolation in quite literally a twinkling of the eye. So that's why yesterday we've launched with hundreds of partners from around the world, the Global Regeneration Corps of first responders, because we're now mobilizing Ubiquity University, Humanity Rising, around preparation for a world that is now actively spinning out of control. And one of the deeper themes that we've been contemplating and raising to public attention is the disposition of being, I would say, that we all need to embody. We all need to inculcate, whoever we are, wherever we are, whatever we're doing, so that we can prepare ourselves for what's coming, because we are now over the waterfall. And all of us need to take that in. And as you all know who've been watching Humanity Rising from the very beginning, we've been accentuating that the disposition of being that all of us need to now embody is the feminine. And the feminine is the gateway to the kind of resilience we now need to inculcate. The feminine is the gateway to the psychological and emotional and spiritual strengthening and individuation that we need to access. But the feminine has been vanquished by our patriarchal culture, and it's not so easy to find. And so we've had numerous themes on the feminine. And today, we want to deepen our awareness of the feminine. And to do that, we're going to go to the great state of Colorado, to the Rocky Mountains, to the Maitreya Abbey, and hear from Roshi Shinko Ilia Perez, who was born in Spain and immigrated to the United States and has been in Zen training in the white plum tradition for many decades, and was inaugurated as a sensei and then a Roshi in 2014, and is now the abbess of the Maitreya Abbey there in the Rocky Mountains. And she's developed a body of work and has written a book on the Zen priestess and the snake. She's written a book on the Great Heart Way and holds seminars and teachings on the Great Heart Way, which is essentially a recovery of the feminine. So Roshi, I want to welcome you to Humanity Rising. I'm grateful that you're taking the time to grace us today. And the Roshi will lead us in our opening meditation, everyone, and then provide an exposition on recovery of the feminine. And then when she's done, I'll circle back, as I always do, and we'll have a dialogue till the end of our time together. Bashinko, welcome to Humanity Rising.
Thank you, Jim. And now we'll start with the 5 minutes of meditation from the heart. And when we do this meditation, we focus our awareness at the heart center. We maintain our breathing, our visualization, our concentration, our focus in that area of the heart center. I know you do this a lot, but since we are doing it 5 whole minutes, I wanted to give you more instruction if some of you didn't know. Now we start after the bell. Just continue bringing your awareness to your heart center. I want to dedicate the merits of my presentation to the safety of all beings everywhere. I'm speaking from Berthold, Colorado, at Maitreya Abbey, in the unceded land of the Arapaho people. Talking to Jim before we start the live session, I felt like I was coming here to preach to the choir, because it seems we are in the same I don't know, energy of mind, of the importance of the sacred feminine for these times, especially for these times. I want to go through maybe some important things that I felt happened during the pandemic. Just the grief we felt for all the things we lost maybe had helped us bring our heart at a deeper level. Also, many people have experienced the dark night of the soul and the dark night of the planet, which they are both connected, and therefore their hearts are more open than ever. Also, many people trying to bring their unique gifts to try to save life and the planet. And whether it is through meditation or donating money to the right organizations or environmental activism or planting trees or challenging and transforming the system that are exploiting the planet's resources. So also during the pandemic, many people within the isolation, if they had a practice, I'm sure that their spiritual practice flourished during the pandemic. At least that happened to me. And maybe many people now have been in contact with the sacredness of life and the sacredness of their life, where before I don't think we would be so open to receive the sacred feminine if our heart would not be open in many people. It's the opening of the heart of many people what are bringing the sacred feminine. And I also want to say that Humanity Rising is doing an outstanding job in helping people or group of people present their unique gifts on how to help the planet. I feel that it is as if we were moving on a spiral of endless time and connecting deeper and deeper with our heart and with the question, what is it really essential, important to save life on the planet? Because actually, since the development of our patriarchal civilization that is currently destroying our planet was rooted in the suppression, persecution, and denial of the sacred feminine, it is so important, if we want to heal, that we find out what was it about the sacred feminine and the civilizations that honor the sacred feminine that patriarchy had to make such an effort to crush, trash, crush, and exterminate. So what was it? And I hope that everyone after this seminar, webinar, you have an idea of what was it, and also the difference of mindset and heart, the difference of hearts that patriarchy and the civilizations that honor the mother goddess. So when I was a little girl of 5.5 years old, I had an experience with the sacred dimension of life. And I knew at that moment that when I was gonna be old, I was gonna be teaching about the sacred feminine. I I have no idea why. And I didn't feel that that's something that I was going to do. But with everything that is happening in the planet, like Jim said, this catastrophic climate is already coming, like we are already falling, and it's a great time to embrace the sacred feminine. The sacred feminine is innate in us. So as we ask for help to the sacred feminine outside, she manifests inside. No separation. So now, yeah, I didn't know why I was going to have to teach about the sacred feminine. And now it's very clear in these times of climate crisis how important it is to remember the sacred feminine. And because all human beings and all creatures are the heart of the sacred feminine. So if we can count on someone, that is the sacred feminine. I wrote this book that Jim presented, also because of my need of doing something for the climate, and my particular mission, assigned mission, is to talk about the sacred feminine. So here I talk about all my experience of the sacred feminine through Zen, because through the silence of Zen, I enter through many of those gates of the invisible dimension and connected me with the mother of all things. Reconnected me even more strongly because I already was connected since I was a girl. And I also in this book talk about the practices to reconnect with her. Our ancestors of 100,000 years ago experienced the creative source of life as the mother. And this mother, containing in herself the masculine and feminine dimensions of being, gave birth to humanity and all of creations. But being raised in a patriarchal civilization, like many other millions and millions of people, it's difficult to conceive a creative source of the universe in the image of the mother. But maybe not maybe hearing humanity rising is easy because you guys already know the importance of the mother. So I think it's very important to, in these times of climate crisis, to visualize the cosmos as a creation of a benevolent great mother that contains in herself all masculine and feminine energies. So anyway, maybe for some people it's difficult to imagine to be born in a civilization that envisions the creative source of the universe in the image of the mother. But with time, everyone gets used to new things. And for our ancestors, also the moon was very important, and the moon also represented the Great Mother. And the moon was one of our best teachers in 100,000 years ago. We learned from the moon about death and life, impermanence and transformation. I mean, what else you want? Everything. We learned from the moon. So observing the moon, we notice the four phases of the moon: waxing, full, waning, and the visible dimension. the invisible dimension was very important, because here is where the new life is gestated, and where the old moon is reborn again as the waxing moon. So our ancestors learn about transformation and impermanence, seeing the phases of the moon succeeding each other. And also, life and death was very important, the vision of life and death. And I would like to have that vision, that life and death are not opposite to each other, that life and death, like the dark and the light needs the dark in order for the continuation of the cycle of light. So I would say the same thing, even though you might not believe in reincarnation. That is okay, but for our ancestors, they saw the same thing, that the young person was the waxing moon, the full person, the full moon, the adult, the waning moon, the old person, and then the old person enters the dark, is received by the luminous black mother, and in her womb, this new human is transformed as the new human. So life and death were just aspects of the mother, like the moon phases, succeeding each other in endless time. I'm getting a lot of messages, but I cannot read them. No. If I would have been one of those ancestors of 100,000 years ago, any ardentile person, and I don't know anything, and I am in the middle of this rough terrain, and it's all dark, I cannot see a thing, and suddenly I see this luminous disk appearing in the sky, I would have made prostrations right there to the spirit of benevolence of the Great Mother. I'm gonna enter a little bit into Zen, because it's very important in order to understand our original ancestors, to understand their mind. And Zen can help us understanding the mind of our ancestors. Zen teaches that about emptiness and fluidity. This empty mind is called true mind. It's called true knowing. And we call it not knowing. In order to experience this not knowing, we need to first learn to transcend our intellect or our conceptual mind. And that's something that we learn in Zen. We can drop the intellect and enter into the deeper mind, the mind of wisdom that we share with the cosmos. So our ancestors didn't have that much baggage in their conceptual mind. And so it was easy for them to live their life from this not knowing mind. And that's a wisdom. It's called the wisdom of emptiness. Also, that's called the mother, Prajnaparamita. Well, our ancestors, thanks to the mind of not knowing and the wisdom of not knowing, they saw the interconnectedness and interdependence of everything. And this was a very important factor in the survival and evolution of humanity. When our ancestors look at their surroundings with their not knowing minds. They saw the animals, the plants, the moon, the caves, the rain, the sun. They intuitively knew, felt, and recognized all creations as the manifestations of the Mother. No doubt about it. Both men and women were contained in this vision. So there was no need to fight. The Mother contains everything and everyone in every shape, color, form that you could ever imagine. The Goddess embraces. Scholar, author, Zen, and Sufi master Lex Hickson, which is in our lineage, but he already passed. In his book, Mother of the Universe, he says that the Great Mother illuminates the entire universe because she is not some local or limited goddess, but our universal Mother. She's recognized in the Mahayana tradition of Buddhism as Prajnaparamita, Mother of all the Buddhas, Mother of the wisdom of emptiness, the depth of unthinkability. I love that depth of unthinkability. I mean, how vast and endless can that be? In other ways, is the depth of emptiness. How deep is that? There's no end to it. That's the Mother, no end to the Mother. In order to understand what happened with the ancestral vision of an organic, alive, and sacred universe, it is very important we look into the myth of the goddess and the myth of the hunter. From the myth of the goddess arises the morality of the age, a sense of unity with the sacred whole through the environment, the cosmos, the animals, the people, and everything else. That sense of unity, of the fabric of life. But the hunter's myth, which is also included in the goddess myth, the hunter needs to hunt in order for the people to survive. And they are aware that a rupture has been made in the fabric of life. So then the shaman goes, journeys between the invisible and the visible dimensions, and he mends the rupture. And they do this every time that they have to kill an animal. That was very important. And it's something that we need so much these days. The cruelty that is being imposed in the animals is pretty unbearable. On the voiceless creatures is quite unbearable. The myth of the goddess lasted for at least 30 years, 30,000 years, all the time, Paleolithic, Neolithic, reverence to everything. Everything was one. Everything has to be maintained. Everything is cared for with heart. And also there were rough conditions, so they were not, sophisticated. But what happened in the 30,000 years after the myth of the goddess, then the invasions start to happen. The invasions from the nomadic warrior tribes. They enter through the villages of all Europe. And then the myth of the hunter separates from the myth of the goddess. And the myth of the hunter eventually becomes the myth of the warrior hero. And when that happened, the myth of the goddess got relegated to the unconscious shadow of humanity. And also the connection with the invisible world was broken. But I'm sure it still is also in our unconscious mind. It's important that you know that the notion of the underworld with menace and destruction and lifelessness, it doesn't appear until now, during the Bronze Age. And there is no evidence at all that humans fought each other until that time. We live in peace, in harmony. But it's now also during the Bronze Age that the religion of the goddess is persecuted for more than 20 centuries by the followers of the new religions that were proclaiming the male deity as supreme, in the image of their own hero warrior myth based on conquest, supremacy, and destruction. This patriarchal trend of conquest, supremacy, and destruction continue to this day. The civilizations that honored the mother goddess were massacred, but some people were able to escape into the Indus Valley, where they brought the teachings from the Great Mother, and this later will be flourished in Tantric Hinduism or Buddhism. In the Old Testament, Yahweh exhorts his followers once and again to commit these crimes against humanity. Pagans was the name given to the goddess and his followers because they didn't want to say her name, as that was part of the scheme to erase her name from the face of the earth. Also, the Garden of Eden is written at this time in the Bronze Age, and it is just a patriarchal invention to trash women and women's wisdom and women's bodies, and to shame the religion of the goddess. Shame and trash. Wasn't Eve accused from being the cause of the fall of humanity? It's just laughable, because really, the fall of humanity is happening now, and you know who caused it. It was not the Great Mother. And weren't 8 million women burned at the stake during the 18th century? Just poor, simple country women that had learned the lore of the Great Mother from their mothers and grandmothers. Eight millions of our ancestors killed. 8 million. But many objects survived the persecution of the times of the Great Mother. The 19th century archaeologists, when studying the objects of the excavation, missed the sanctity of the feminine principle, which contains both the masculine and the feminine, and discarded the religions as fertility cults. For example, maybe I don't have time to say that. Anyway, but archaeologists like Mariha Jimbutas and historians like Anne Baring and Jules Cashford have dedicated their lives to the scientific study of these ancient people, and have made new discoveries that shed light into the remarkable and inspiring life of our original ancestors of the Neolithic and Paleolithic times, when we planted the seeds of the first civilizations. By that time, we had learned to cultivate the soil, build houses, temples, and villages. We established agriculture. We developed technologies for herding and farming, like plows and irrigation systems, and many other important accomplishments. But you might wonder, why am I telling you this if it's all gone? But the good news is that it's not gone. And I found Carl Jung's support on this. He says that our mind goes back many millions of years, sprung from a perennial root beneath the earth. And we would be in better accordance with the truth if we took the existence of the root into our calculations, because the root matter is the mother of all things. He also said that human beings have a personal unconscious, like you all know, and a collective unconscious, like you all know. But I like to say that this collective unconscious is inherited by every member of the human race. He also said that an experience of the race is never lost, but transmitted down the race. The whole history of humanity is always alive somewhere in our mind. And Jung exhorts us to live fully and reach down and bring back to life the deepest levels of the mind. In other words, Jung is asking us to reclaim the sacred dimension of life and the mother of all things. She, like the sacredness, is innate in us. I wrote the following poem when I experienced the mother of all things during a Zen retreat many years ago. It's here. From the dimension of blue light, not even 1,000 steel swords can kill me. Free from life and death, my tears make the shining stars, and my laughter the ocean dance. I'm not a Buddha, though, but the mother of all things. My Zen teacher didn't approve of that experience, but it didn't matter. Other people have. With the dangerous things that are happening to our planet, like we are already falling down the abyss, we will instinctively reach down to the deeper layers of the mind that Jung calls the perennial root, and manifest the Great Mother in ourselves as ourselves. Also, Jung said that meditation seems to be the royal road to the unconscious mind. And this also happened to me. After practicing meditation for many years, one day something lit in me, and I saw into the distant past of humanity, and I experienced the benevolence of the Great Mother. And this is a book that me and my partner put together, The Great Hard Way, how to work with our feelings, to illuminate our unconscious mind, and also how to use the power of our awareness that we develop from meditation to use it as the light to explore the unconscious mind in a very safe way. During the last 4,000 years, we have been trained in the patriarchal ways of thinking, and we might have forgotten what it feels like to be born in a universe that we perceive as the benign mother, containing all genders, races, and creatures equally. Maybe we forgot, but like Jung says, this way of perceiving life is still with us, and we can reconnect with it. Now that our precious planet is in a precarious situation, with the climate crisis escalating rapidly to catastrophic proportions, it is important that we look back to the origins of humanity, when we were in peace with each other and the environment, evolving into the human race through our efforts of mutual cooperation and community life, peaceful community life. Yeah, I'm almost done. Our ancestors saw the whole of creations as the Great Mother that gave birth to all forms of life that were herself. She embodied the planet and all of creations. We were her children, and we felt connected to her. This primordial way of perceiving the universe is still with us, and we can reconnect with it. In times like this, when we don't really know if we will survive the climate crisis or not, it is a great time to connect with the Great Mother and to receive her guidance for peace and survival. Our ancestors were connected to her, were open to all possibilities, and surviving rough conditions brought forth humanity. They brought forth humanity, and we can do it again. So now that we have the opportunity to reconnect with our great mother, we might have the opportunity to bring forth our humanity again. I just thank you.
Thank you, Roshi. Thank you very much. Let's start our dialogue with your story a little bit more fully. You mentioned that at a very young age you had a numinous experience that motivated you with the certainty that you were going to be teaching about the feminine or orienting your life around the Great Mother. I'd love to hear, as I think would we all, your story of what happened, what was the experience that you had, and then the narrative of how that led you to your spiritual path. I would love to hear how you got oriented as a Western woman to Zen in the East. Tell us your story.
Yes, thank you for asking that. I just didn't want to go into that because it's very intense.
We like intense.
I was raised in Spain, but I grew up in Puerto Rico. I'm Puerto Rican.
Oh,
And when I was little, I used to live in a house in the tropical jungle of Puerto Rico, and but suddenly I have to go to school, and my parents took me to live with my grandparents, and in the room of my aunt that was a spinster, and I was just an innocent child of 5.5 coming from the wilderness. I love all the animals and the innocence and play like crazy. Nothing was bad, and suddenly she started taking me to church, and there was a boy that lived in the house next to us, and we play after school. And one day we're playing, 5.5 years old. He takes his zipper down and he starts peeing next to me, and I can see the little peanuts. And I said, "Can I touch?" And he says, "Yes." And I touch it with the index finger, and that was it. But his brother saw us, and went to tell my aunt, and my aunt, I don't know what they talk or what they said or what they understood. I had no idea. My aunt took me by the arm, pushed me into the room, and told me that I was gonna die in hell, and I believed it. I believed it. I didn't care. I didn't ask. I didn't have protection, defenses. I believed it. Hell, hell. I have seen hell in the frescoes of the church. So I have seen it, the flames. So the whole night I screamed in terror, seeing these flames burning me alive, visualizing it, but so real that I fell asleep. And the next thing I remember, I wake up. My aunt is sleeping already in the bed next to mine. And I'm sitting in the bed, and I see the most beautiful lady that you could imagine. And she was all love. And she was in these veils that move as if there was wind in the room. And she's above the ground, but it's just the love she brought me, the luminosity she brought me. I was, I don't know for how long I was suspended in this other dimension, contemplating, feeling the healing that that she brought with me, just receiving that healing. And then I guess when I felt healed enough and felt happy, I wanted to tell Titi to see her. Also, what a pity that Titi couldn't see her too. But that immediately she disappeared, and Titi woke up. She was totally panicked, just brought me in bed with her and hold herself around me the whole night, shaking in fear. I didn't needed that, but I let her do that. I felt sorry for her. In the morning, I am so happy running down back and forth my grandparents' hallway and screaming, I've seen Santa Claus, I've seen Santa Claus. Yeah, so my parents, everybody met around me and they told me I couldn't talk about that anymore. So it's almost like I was shut down for forever. But then I received the message that you will understand when you are late, when you are old. And then other messages through life, like you will be teaching this when you are old or things like that. But it was never clear, and I didn't enter Zen with the idea, oh, Zen is going to take me there. I entered Zen because I fell in love with silence, and silence was for me the gate. And I'm still in Zen, but I teach now about the feminine in Zen. So
How did, when you were then a young girl, you were still living in Puerto Rico.
yeah.
Did you, as a result of that experience of this apparition of the mother, did you become more Catholic for a while? Did you associate that with the Catholic tradition? How did the feminine begin to incubate herself in you? Tell us how
Yeah,
through
not
your
at
teenage
all.
years and
Yeah,
college years.
thank you. Not at all. I mean, this woman didn't have a stain of thought in her mind. She was just pure love and acceptance. You know, for me, yeah, no, I didn't think she was Christian. I hated going to church, because I was always doing things with boys, little things that kids do, and I didn't want to confess that to the priest. So I hated to go, and I always was accumulating mortal sins over mortal sins. So it was not very pleasant. Um, but then I entered a Catholic school of nuns in Spain, and there was there Virgin Mary that I adore because she just looks so much like the lady I saw, and she was sculpted in marble of 5 or 6 feet tall, and she was so beautiful, but she was crushing with her feet a black snake.
Mm.
And I sat in first row in church just to look at her and just look at her and look at the snake. And I knew these two didn't match together. So I needed to find out. I was only 11, but I tell myself, I'm gonna find out what this snake is here. This is not what the lady that I saw would do. She would not crush anyone or anything. Yeah, and I found out, and look, I found out a lot of things that have been kept secret from us.
Right. So you continued to develop a deep interior relationship with the purity of the mother. And then how did that lead you into the Zen tradition? What was the relationship that began to develop in your consciousness between the feminine and the silent rigor of Zen?
They told me when I had that apparition, they told me because I felt like the lives of the many, luminous letters of the many. It seems it's not one person, but it's the many enlightened ones. They told me, forget about this for now. You forget about this for now. You will understand later. And I did. I didn't carry that with me. I entered Zen because I fell in love with silence. And I didn't know that silence was going to take me to the sacred feminine, but it did because it's innate in us. And, I had to leave my beloved teachers because he would not accept my experience. And then went to Lama Sotimalione. She recognized my experience as the king experience. And then other teachers in my own tradition has encouraged me and to continue spreading the seed of the Great Mother, which is the planet. The Great Mother has no seed but the planet. This planet is the seed of the Great Mother.
Mm, mm, mm. Well, I want to explore a little more deeply the relationship between Zen and the feminine, because normally when one thinks of Zen, one thinks of a very austere, I would say abstract understanding. I've been to a number of 7-day sessions, and a session, everyone, if you haven't had the experience, extraordinary. Actually, it's you're in a typically a Zen community. You're holding silence. You're getting up at 4:30 every morning and meditating through the day in silence, receiving teachings. And I don't recall ever having any teaching on the feminine. It was always about stopping thought, emptying the mind. But you have discovered through Zen the feminine. I would love to hear more about
That
Zen and the feminine.
when, also I'm investigating, and it's very probable that when the tradition of the Great Mother was massacred and that a lot of people flee, some people also flee to China, and they merge with the religion that was there, Confucianism or something. And because Taoism, which is the mother of Zen, is so feminine, so I felt that actually we Zen receive some inheritance from the Great Mother. And I find very symbolic when the Buddha had all the attacks by Mara, that the cobra that symbolizes also the Great Mother was the symbol of that the Mother came to save him. But Jim, I just had to throw myself into the emptiness of Zen. I had children, and that time for me was precious. When I practiced, I practiced. When I practiced, I didn't entertain thoughts. I enter as deep as possible into emptiness. I have no fear. I trusted my feelings completely, and one day I had the experience with the sacred feminine, and it just happened. I was not looking for it, but then everything makes sense, somehow intuitively. I have gone into Zen, and Zen was the one that took me to the feminine. And I'm still in Zen, bringing the feminine in Zen, because it's very much needed.
Tell us about your book and explain the image of the Zen priestess and the snake. I was struck by your sense looking at the Virgin Mary stamping on a snake, that was somehow incongruent. You wrote a book called The Zen Priestess and the Snake.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I am a Zen priestess myself, and I have been in the lookouts for the snake, to understand the snake, to understand the symbol of the snake, to understand what was it for the patriarchs that they was so important that the goddess Mary had to crush this snake. There was a lot of history just in that, just in looking that. That's so full of information. So they are giving us, all women, an example that that's what we have to do with the religion of the Great Mother, as they did with the snake on the tree of good and evil, that also represented the Great Mother there. So that's what you do with the Great Mother. You kill it with your feet. And I think that one of the biggest obstacles that I face in bringing forward the sacred feminine in Zen and bringing practices about women in the Zen environment, is all the shame that had been put on the sacred feminine. It's a lot of shame, and sometimes I feel like I am handling a mountain of shame on top of me, Maybe it's receiving a lot of projection from people, what they, not in your, I mean, I was so surprised when you were talking about the sacred feminine like that. It's like, okay, Jim already said my talk. I don't, it was like you said exactly the same thing that I was saying. So I didn't feel that here. I didn't feel any shame here. But usually there is so much shame put on the sacred feminine.
Yes, yes. And it's East as well as the West, obviously going all the way back to the Buddha, the Buddha three times
Mm-hmm.
when asked about women and establishing a lineage of women, said no.
Yeah,
And it was only on that third time,
yeah,
under duress, as it were, and
yeah.
then making it clear that the highest woman would be lower than the lowest monk.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of blows your mind when you think
Mm-hmm.
that this man was enlightened.
Mm-hmm.
And what does enlightenment truly mean when the cultural
Mm-hmm.
expression of your enlightenment is
Mm-hmm.
so distorted
Mm-hmm.
by a misperception
Mm-hmm.
around gender and around the feminine.
Yeah,
And as you know, that endures in the Tibetan Buddhist
yeah,
tradition into
yeah.
most of the Japanese and Chinese Buddhist traditions. So very struck by your experience in Zen, that there was a lot of shame, as you call it, around the feminine. So you've been really heroic. I think
Mm-hmm.
you're one of the first Roshis that I know about
Thank
that is really actively, first of all, there's not that many women. And then within that context, there's not that much of an accentuation of the feminine and an embracing the snake rather than stamping
you.
on the snake
Yeah.
uh, as a reservoir actually of deep wisdom
Mm-hmm.
and one of the personifications of the mother.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and would love to hear more about how you evolved and developed this notion, but stayed within the Zen tradition because you're also a Roshi, so you're very Zen
yeah.
in your approach,
Yeah.
but you've activated the feminine
Yeah.
in Zen
Yeah.
through Zen. So say
Yeah.
more about
Oh, oh, I was a warrior.
that. I have no doubt.
I was a warrior. I mean, a Latin warrior. And I didn't care because when you reach your true self, you are none of those things. You are just your true self. So, yeah, I had to break with several teachers. The path have not been easy. Um, and maybe, being a Latino woman had to do with that. And I'm very passionate also, and passion was not something that was part of Zen then. Um, yeah, I have in my own tradition, I'm very accepted and appreciated. Um, our founder temple in Los Angeles, and the Roshi abbot there, Wendy Gyoko Nakao. She's very supportive of of my 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 role in Zen of bringing the feminine. So I don't feel like very threatened in my own tradition, but I was going to Humanity Rising and I didn't know you guys were so much in alignment with the sacred feminine, so I was a little more concerned. Um, my sane life, because I have kids. Also, I think you are pointing to one day coming from a 7-day retreat. I think it was the fifth night. The luminosity in my room was amazed, and I sat down in a chair just to feel involved in that luminosity. And suddenly, at that moment, I heard an internal voice that told me, "You have two choices. the path of the samurai, of the path of the heart. And I didn't hesitate, and I say the path of the heart. And then at that moment, it was like a dike of 100,000 years old just broke open, and I cried, what I call rivers and lakes. And then that night, when I look at the window, I just had the experience of all those stars being my own eyes looking at my eyes. And that was the beginning of my path, the heart, so transforming all the negative emotions in my heart. That's also part of the book, The Great Heart Way, and it can be done. All the negative emotions are not but wisdom if we learn how to transform it. So you took me back to that experience again. I couldn't believe it. You take me back always to these experiences that I'm trying to hide.
Well, it's the experiences that we have and the stories we tell out of those experiences that really shape our lives. That's why I'm always interested in what happened to
Mm-hmm.
you when you were
Yeah,
5.5 years old. That was a seminal experience
yeah,
of experience.
yeah,
First of all, it was an experience of innocence and curiosity
yeah.
that was refracted and reported into a patriarchal shame, sexual taboo culture in a way that then brutalized you with hell and damnation for touching that little boy's peepee. And out of that comes the apparition the same.
Wow.
I mean, that's an extraordinary thing, Shinko, that you would have the innocence,
Yeah.
shame, the great mother in a complexio that really um, created the impetus for everything that you've become.
Mm, definitely. Thank you.
I mean, that's an extraordinary gift from the universe for being so young to have such a powerful a shadow and light dimensionalized experience almost simultaneously.
You are very, very right about that. And yeah, it saved me. And from that day on, I didn't trust the adults because I knew that I knew better. I knew better. And I knew that I could always follow my true feelings
Yeah.
because that's what happened. Anyway, I also want to mention that I have always the support of my husband, Roshi Shishin Jerry Wick, that he's very supportive of my work with the sacred feminine. And it makes a big difference to have his support.
Mm, mm. Well, let me ask you this, Roshi. As you contemplate the feminine, knowing that the feminine has many guises. For example, right here, I
Mhm.
have the Black Madonna from Rock Amador
Uh-huh.
in France, which is a certain fractal of the feminine. And then behind, this is the Earth Goddess. This is Demeter. This is Gaia, which is a different tonality of the feminine. And then in the back there, I have the great blue Madonna from the Chartres Cathedral that personifies the essence of love as refracted through wisdom
Mm.
for the feminine. And then there's of course Kuan Yin, there's
Mhm.
Kali,
Yeah.
uh, Durga,
Yeah.
Isis from Egypt. Of the different fractals
Hmm.
of the feminine,
Yes.
I would love to hear your story of how the feminine has shape shifted herself through your experience. And is there a particular aspect of the feminine that that resonates the most deeply for you?
I really haven't studied all the different goddesses. What attracts me is the essence, the same essence of all these goddess. And yeah, no, they take different faces and different clothes depending on which country they are or what culture is contribute the essence as the Great Mother. That's what my work is with. And I remember that when I was new in Rochester, maybe the first retreat I did, I was feeling desolated in that cold environment. And I looked over a mantle and I saw the little statue of Kuan Yin.
Mm.
And that did it for me. I knew I could come back to do retreats there because she was there. And I asked a monk, who was she? And he told me that it was a male. But I didn't believe it, not for a second. I knew the Great Mother was there, and that was very important to me. So, yeah, or like this other goddess, Tara,
Oh, yes.
and manifestations of the Great Mother. But I haven't studied them. I don't have that interest. Just
Mm-hmm.
the essence is what I like.
And then speak to us about the essence. Would love to hear your perception of the essence of the mother.
Uh, well, I'm going to talk about the essence of the mother, but you need to know that we cannot talk about the essence of the mother. So having that clear, I'll tell you the essence of the mother is very playful. It's very playful and it's very innocent. And it's very creative. Um, and has the power of seeing the future, has the power of seeing into the future. And many women from the tradition of the mother, the priestesses, had the gift of seeing. And I really didn't want to talk about this. Jim, but you're getting it out of me. That's so important to recover all those followers of the goddess long time ago. I know we are still here. We need those powers of seeing for what is coming. Yeah. It's very benevolent. I find that the mother is difficult to embody because she's so vulnerable. She's so vulnerable and she feels the pain of everyone and everything. And she feels the pain of the planet and all the beings that are dying.
Mm.
So, I think we call it a bodhisattva, like you have to be a bodhisattva in order to want to be able to feel so much pain. And at the same time, just be a vessel where pain can come through and not to react, although we are feeling it.
Mm. Shannon in the chat would love you to speak about the goddess that is alive in the masculine and the masculine that's alive in the goddess. You mentioned how Zen really arose out of Taoism, and the great symbol of the Tao is the yin and the yang. Speak to us a little bit, Roshi, about the feminine and the masculine and the feminine.
I really don't, I had never gotten deep to understand how Taoism work, the yin and the yang, but I see the yin and the yang, the feminine and the masculine, but the circle is feminine. The circle is feminine. So every time that I mention the Great Mother, I said containing in herself the masculine and feminine dimensions of being. So there is not, a sacred masculine that is separate from the sacred feminine. She contains the sacred masculine. And what I had noticed more and more in men that are reclaiming the sacred feminine in themselves, that they are absolutely beautiful. How in touch with their vulnerability and their femininity, and they don't have shame about it. Uh, yeah, those are the men that embody the feminine, and she is in people of all genders. So people of all genders embody the feminine in different ways, different combinations of masculine and feminine. So I am very masculine, I know that, but I am a devotee of the Great Mother. So I'm also super feminine. So we all have these energies, and we all use them in different ways, different times, different circumstances.
Mhm.
There's almost the spontaneity. There is nothing fixed. Everything is in a flux. So our minds also have to be in that flux. Otherwise, we are out of it. So it's nothing get stuck in the mind. We just go with the flow. Now I manifest the feminine. Now I manifest the masculine. I don't know when that happened, but it happened in different ways, different circumstances.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, that's, I think, a very profound point that you're making, because, normally we think of the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine, as co-equal, integral to one another, in balance. Sometimes they get out of balance. But I think what you're bringing in is very profound, that the Tao,
Mm-hmm.
that which holds the yin and the yang together, is the mother.
Mm-hmm.
And, we were talking before the session, everyone, about Anne Baring and Jules Cashford's master work, The Myth of the Goddess,
Yeah.
which is probably the definitive work
Mm-hmm.
on the history and meaning of the deep feminine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's worth pointing out that the earliest iconography that we found about the masculine is contained inside the womb of the mother, that the
Mm-hmm.
earliest depictions of the masculine
Mm-hmm.
weren't separate, like the yin and the yang.
Mm-hmm.
As the Roshi saying, they're inside.
Mm-hmm.
They're inside. And
Mm-hmm.
also, if you look at the cosmology of Plato, or the early Hindu, Buddhist, Sumerian cosmologies, it was the mother. The mother contains all things within herself, the masculine and the feminine. So in some ways, the great mother is feminine, certainly, but in an ontological way, she's more than that masculine feminine polarity, because it is the mother that contains all the opposites
Mm-hmm.
within herself.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah. I agree with that. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So let's turn then, uh, Shinko, in our final minutes together, to your passion and your book on the Great Heart Way.
Mm.
Tell us, what do you mean by the Great Heart Way?
That happened after I had that experience, which that I thought it was a being of light that brought me that message and make me decide, but I didn't see the spirit. I only felt it, and it really felt like a enlightened being. And then when I chose the heart, I from then on I had to start working on my heart. I was a samurai woman in Zen. I could kill all my emotions. I could, have no thoughts and be so sharp. Then all that changed because my heart, wow, was not, I had not worked in my heart. So then I became, everything was just start feeling my emotions, not bypassing anything. I learned a lot about bypassing. And then I developed this method because also I have noticed that during Zazen, the teachers didn't let you bring any emotional issues to the Dokusan room. So, and I had so many emotions, I had to learn to work with them. And and I remember one time I started trembling and shaking very hard in the Zendo, and I didn't have anybody to talk to. So I took my koan. So I'm sure you're familiar with koans, and my koan was "Who am I?" So I took my koan to my heart, and just in the middle of shaking, "Who am I? Who am I? Who am I?" Day and night, "Who am I?" Um, until I had experience of who I was, and again, it was again by trusting my feelings. I didn't bypass my shaking. I didn't bypass my panic. I just I just made a container for it, and it transformed again. It transformed again. So I knew if I would keep doing if I would continue staying with my emotions, that they would be transforming continuously. So then I tried with anger. And anger is always a pain in the heart. So I stay with my pain in the heart, and then my heart open, and then the anger transforms in a different wisdom. So I just love to work with my emotions, and then our students also start working with the emotions under our guidance, me and my partner. And these books also illustrate the their experiences in transforming their emotions, and also recovering part of themselves that were left behind as children, for some reason we leave parts of ourselves aside, and then this part is still wanting us to reclaim them. So it's very important, because when we finish, when I was empowered as a sensei, I felt that I have not worked on my personality, and I had a lot of trouble with people, and I thought I had to work on this, and it really worked. And then our students have to work too.
Yes, well, I think you're part of the vanguard of luminaries that are revolutionizing human spirituality. Because I think you're pointing to something fundamentally flawed in the
Mm,
classical meditative traditions.
mm,
Uh, and Zen, I think, is a perfect example of I would say, almost a masculine austerity
mm,
about a masculine understanding of
mm,
emptiness, which is sort of the elimination of the emotions, the elimination
mm.
of feelings. And I think what you're bringing in,
Yeah.
Shinko, is a powerful new impulse that could really revitalize the Zen tradition. That as one goes into one's heart,
Mm,
the heart doesn't empty; the
mhm,
heart becomes full.
mhm,
And the heart then informs the brain, and the
mhm,
heart informs the belly, and the
mhm,
heart coherence
mhm,
and the emotions of abundance, the emotions of happiness and gratitude. We want to feel those emotions.
mhm,
And so to start developing the next phase of Zen around the fullness of being as opposed to the emptiness of being
mhm,
is, I think, a revolutionary, transcendental mission, because it's bringing the transcendental dimension that has been
mhm,
so refined in classical meditations into a more immanental,
mhm,
feminine, heart-centered appreciation of the fullness of being. Would you
mhm.
agree with that?
I agree with what you're saying, but yeah, our center is not austere at all. I'm not, because we
Yeah,
work
you're
with emotion.
reinventing that. That's
Yeah, and this is a lab. Maitreya Abbey is a lab where we have heart connection. We have heart relationship with the residents, and it works very well. We are all connected and interconnected and interdependent. And yeah, we solve the problems from the heart, and we have to become vulnerable and explore our humanity together. And I don't conceive any other kind of Zen. I would never be able, to the old school of Zen. I couldn't ever go back there.
It's beautiful. As Shannon's saying in the chat, you're leading a Zen rebellion. Well, that's beautiful, Roshi. I really want to thank you for your time today, because I think what you've embodied for us in the last hour or so is the kind of deep commitment to the origin of things.
Mm-hmm.
And out of the connection with the origin of things, you're revolutionizing our present modalities of spirituality by bringing back into how we connect with the numinous, the power of the great mother and the feminine that holds all things,
Mm-hmm.
but in holding all things provides the pathway to all things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been the absence of that in most of the world's spiritualities over the last several thousand years
Mm-hmm.
that has created a spirituality that would burn 1 million women as witches, that would repress women in monasteries all over Asia. And so I really want to celebrate you
Thank you.
and the fact that you're a warrior with heart,
Thank you.
and you're thereby bringing into the Zen tradition, but bringing into world spirituality, I say, as part of that cohort of pioneers that is bringing into world spirituality um, the container of the mother and the power of the feminine, and because of the power of the feminine, the power of the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the great heart way that you speak of. So I really want to honor you and acknowledge everything that you've done, and recommend both your books to everyone,
Thank
The
you.
Zen Priestess and the Snake and The Great Heart Way. So thank you,
Thank you very much.
Roshi. We've
Thank you.
appreciated your time. And would you just end our session with just giving us a blessing?
Yes. Um, May you be all safe. May you connect with your deep heart and your mission on this planet, and you may be safe from danger, and may the Great Mother be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for your attention during this most extraordinary session. And then tomorrow, we're going to take up the issue of unidentified flying objects and the recent report from the Department of Defense to the U.S. Senate about the UFO phenomenon. We're having Dan Sheehan back. And then we're also having a special guest, Dr. Barbara Vickar, who worked with John Mack at Harvard many years ago on interviewing, at the request of the Pentagon,
Mm.
people who had reported that they were abducted by alien spacecraft. And we're going to just hear that story and talk about the UFO phenomenon as it's gaining currency and ascendancy in contemporary society. So Roshi, thank you very much for illuminating the feminine today. Tomorrow we'll go on to a different dimension of Humanity Rising. Same time, same station. You're now all welcome to join our after session chat. And you'll see the link in the chat box. The Roshi hopes to join you. So thank you all. We'll see you here again tomorrow. Same time, same station on Humanity Rising.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.